And now let's take a look at what's in the international press this morning with Florence Villeminot. You've been reading the international news. A lot of papers, of course, focusing on the situation in Syria. Let's begin with the aftermath of Wednesday's bomb attacks in Damascus and just what it means for the country.
That's right. We're going to take a look at Gulf News, which says that Syria has reached a tipping point. It says that this bloody and precise killing of Bashar al-Assad's most senior lieutenants is a preview of more killings to come. This was an inside job, which is proof that the Free Syrian Army is well organized and powerful. To quote, if the president's brother-in-law is not safe, which general is not looking over its shoulder? But it points out that the rebels aren't a single force, and they don't have a single plan for what they would do if they suddenly found themselves in charge of Damascus, and they don't have a single plan of how to eject al-Assad from power.
So a strong force, but not a particularly coherent, that well-organized force nonetheless. That's in Gulf News. Other Arabic papers are also focusing on the aftermath of the bombing, but this time looking at the other side of things, what it means for President Bashar al-Assad.
That's right. This is an article in Sharq al-Awsat that says that al-Assad is alone in his losing battle. It says that he suffered a severe blow and likens him to a giant that's had both his hands cut off. And it says that al-Assad is following in the footsteps of Gaddafi. In his final days, he was all alone because all his aides had either defected or been killed. And it says that his days are numbered as well. It's not a question of whether he's going to fall, but when he's going to fall. And al-Assad's days are numbered because his inner circle has become an easy target. And I feel like this question of his inner circle being an easy target is well portrayed in a cartoon in the International Herald Tribune, where you see al-Assad at a table there with half of which has been blown off, and one of his aides there saying, well, the inner circle just got a lot smaller.
Well, you know, this question of, it's not a question of if, but when Assad falls. It's something we've been saying for well over a year, for the 18 months since the uprising has begun, and it still hasn't happened. Sticking to Syria, an interesting piece about what the situation means for Iran.
That's right. Now, according to the International Herald Tribune, Iran is in danger of losing its main ally. Syria is the linchpin of the security order in the Middle East, according to this article. And if Assad goes, it'll be a tough blow for Iran because Syria has become Iran's main conduit to supply aid and weapons to various Islamist groups such as Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Islamic Jihad. And these groups, in a number of ways, are an extension of Iran's power. So with al-Assad threatened, or Tehran's dream of becoming this big regional power are disappearing, quote, like a mirage in the desert.
There's another big story in the news, of course, and it's the Israelis who were targeted by the suicide bomber in Bulgaria. And we reported in the news that their bodies have just been returned to Israel. You went to read the Israeli papers. What do they make of that?
Well, this is an article in Yediot Aronot, which is answering to people who say, how did the authorities fail to avert this attack? And according to this article, you know, despite the country's best efforts, it's impossible to protect every Israeli in the world. There's no answer to terrorism, it says. It applauds the intelligence community because the intelligence community prevents thousands of attacks. But it says that terrorists will unfortunately always find a hole in the net that's cast by the state of Israel. And to quote, this is our life, and until we find a way to live with the Arab world, we shall have to learn to sustain such blows, but mostly prevent them. And there's an interesting article in the International Herald Tribune, this time moving to Norway, which is also still reeling a year after these terrible terrorist attacks that took place there.
The Utoya killings.
Absolutely. This is an article by the foreign minister, Jonas Gahr Store, and he's trying to figure out how Norway, what has Norway learned from this tragedy. It's a remarkable article, and he says that Norway's strongest weapon in responding to extremism is more openness and more democracy. He says that Norway has embraced the challenge of fighting extremism out in the open, and to quote, he says, open debate is our strongest tool in standing up to extremism.
And finally, there's a surprise move from the U.S. military regarding homosexuals.
That's right. Now, Don't Ask, Don't Tell, just to remind you, was repealed in September. And now, for the first time, the Defense Department has allowed active duty service members to wear their uniform at the Gay Pride March in San Diego. So this is an article in a local paper from San Diego. Now, they can wear their uniforms provided that they adhere to military standards of appearance. But the one thing they can't wear is camouflage.
Florence Villeminot with a review of the international press. Thank you very much.